Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. It is Jeremy Werner, Joey Wagner, starting off the week with some football talk here on the Illini Inquirer Podcast. And what we're going to do today is something we usually do on the site, but I just thought it was a better conversation for the podcast today, Joey. And that's we're going to go through the positions at Illinois football and rank them based on what we've seen, what Illinois has added, and how we feel about these groups. And I do feel like we have to give the warning that just because we have a position lower doesn't mean we're lower on what that position can accomplish, because it's kind of a great exercise for Illinois fans now, right? Because Joey, like the last few on here, I feel like are serviceable groups and could be good groups in the Big Ten. And it's kind of a statement of where Illinois could be. So this was a very difficult exercise, I think, especially in the middle here, because of the depth and the talent Illinois is starting to accrue on the roster.
Yeah, I was like texting you when I was preparing this one. It's like, I think this could go here. It's like, wait, we should just talk about this on the pod. But yeah, I mean, the last, someone's got to be last. It's just how it goes. The last in 2020, entering the 2025 season is vastly different from the last entering like the 2020, even the 21 season. Maybe you could throw 2022, that good year in there for Brett Bielema. So being last is a factor of some position has got to be there, but I still don't think it's some glaring hole. I think that's really the best way for me to think about it is just because you're last doesn't mean you're a problem. It just means that there's some pretty good talent and depth elsewhere on this roster.
It goes against Ricky Bobby's saying, but it's okay. 16 of 22 starters returned. So you're going to feel good about most of these positions. And I haven't gone through the two deep from last year, but it feels like 30 of those players returned from the two deep. Or I don't think that's possible. It's like 25 of those guys. And you do have emerging players as well. So anything you want to get to before we just dive into these rankings, Joey?
No, it was fun. There are a few, like to your point, I think we know really the last one. You could maybe say the last two. And I think we know the top one, which we'll get to. I don't know which order you want to go, but the rest felt very interchangeable.
Yeah.
To me. I mean, I guess maybe there are more like groupings, like these two positions could have flipped and then these three could have been ordered in some way. But it was not as easy as I thought when you texted me last week, like, hey, let's do this. I'm like, oh, that seems pretty straightforward. And then when you start actually thinking about it, there's a lot of movement. I'm fascinated by how close you and I are in order as we get through this.
All right. Well, let's start it off. I'll let you start us off, Joey. And we have very big technology here on the Illini Inquirer Podcast. I have a Google Docs up on me right now where I can kind of break this all down.
I have a Google Docs, Jeremy. Oh, no.
There's a reason I had this coffee, Joey. It's a Google.
Oh, my.
Correct. Is that like Instaface? Did I do my Belichick? The Docs Google.
Oh, man. I'm glad you're not going to cut that. That was
no.
I give you crap for being old. That was old Werner moment there. That made my morning.
I personally enjoyed it. So yeah, glad I get that laugh out of you on a Monday morning. Go ahead.
Are we starting one? Okay. Defensive backs. It's easy. So we're combining safety and corner here in nickel, obviously. Nickel's usually practice with the safety. So even if we had decided to break that up, I don't know how we would have placed Xavier Scott in that. But just they bring back all five starters and Jaheim Clark, who is essentially a starter last season. And you get behind in safety, if you go even into the two deep, you've got Matt Krasedic, you've got Sabor Kareem, who we haven't seen a ton of on the field, but he was a composite four-star kid coming in. You've heard a lot about Tyson Rooks as a backup nickel. I think there's a lot of production there. Xavier Scott was first team All Big Ten. Miles Scott is going into his third year as a starting defensive back. Matthew Bailey really made that. I think it was a star turn, Jeremy, late last season after he got those snaps under his belt. And shout out to Matthew Bailey for talking so openly about that in the spring, in his growing process. At this point, we're like, who's the fourth corner? That's worthy of the number one spot. When your biggest question about this whole defensive back room is, who's the fourth corner? Do you think it could be? So I just really like where they're at. I like the talent. I like the returning starters and production. I think there's reason to be optimistic for a big year for that position group.
Yeah, and you got Tyler Strain back out of the transfer portal, who's good depth, whether it's nickel or the corner spot. Like if he was your fourth corner, you'd feel okay about it. But Illinois is going and trying to find another one, it seems like. Jadarius Perkins, the Toledo transfer, they have offered. He played at Florida for 3 years, transferred to Toledo, had a pec injury, tried to play through it, but redshirted that year, and Corey Parker recruited him. So if they landed him, that's a guy who's played a lot of snaps at the Power 4 level. That'd tell you they have even better depth. And I do feel like a Tanner Heckel or Amar Reynolds or Vernon Woodward could come in and contribute talent-wise, but you're not having to rely on those guys. Like you think of like Quan Martin as a true freshman had to play, and Sidney Brown as a true freshman had to play. I can't argue with this. I will have this number one. I do want to say that I really considered outside linebacker here because I do think – is Gabe Backus the best player in your team? He might be the highest drafted.
Yeah. I mean, when your quarterback's as good as Luke is, it's hard just because the down-to-down impact that he can have. But in terms of the highest draft pick, it might be Gabe.
So, like, Xavier Scott is in that top 3 probably, right? So, like, you add also another star in Matthew Bailey. I think he's a star and solid starters. Like, feels like we don't talk enough about Torrey Cox and how he made plays on the ball. Would he have 7 pass breakups, 3 interceptions last year? He can get taken advantage of with some of these bigger wideouts, but then you have Caleb Patterson you can kind of have compete against those guys. And then you have Jaheim Clark, who I thought was really good down the stretch and I think could take a real leap. So I do think it's defensive backs, but Gabe Backus, I feel like, is one of the best players on the team, is a star on the team. Leon Lowry Jr., he's got to prove a little bit more that he can be more of an impactful pass rusher, but he's a proven starter at the Power 4 level. Alec Bryant is at least a proven rotational player who plays close to starters reps. Had 2 sacks in that Nebraska game that came up big. I'm interested to see if he can take another step forward in his 6th year of college. I also think, are you losing a lot? Can we bring up this conversation with Alec Bryant and Leon Lowry? Like, are you losing a lot at that position after losing Seth Coleman? Like Seth Coleman, I thought his 2 years ago was better than last year. So maybe we can dive into outside linebackers here, but I think the depth there is really good with JoJo Hayden, Joe Barna. Daniel Brown didn't play a lot last year, but he did play in that bowl game and I thought made an impact. So it's just the depth there, the top of it. I feel like you got really solid players alongside a superstar in Gabe Backus. So I will go number 1 defensive backs, but number 2 for me, Joey, was outside linebackers. And I do feel like there's an argument to be had if Gabe Backus has like a 10-sack season that we could look back and, outside linebacker could be one of the best. They've rebounded well there because we were kind of worried about where they would be long-term after Seth Coleman left. Leon Lowry and adding some of these pieces has been good.
I do not have outside linebacker for a little bit here.
Wow.
I've got a couple position groups. My concern with outside linebacker, and it's, again, you're really in the weeds here. Who's your non-Gabe Backus pass rusher? I think that group is fine against the run. Who is going to be that pressure generator opposite act? Now, Gabe's going to generate a ton of them, I think. We know that. We've seen him and what he did a year ago.
Can I give you 2 names?
I mean, I think JoJo Hayden's probably going to be one of those names.
Leon Lowry, JoJo Hayden would be my 2. I think JoJo could take a real step forward as a pass rusher. He was already doing that last year, just didn't get some of the sack production. And the other thing I would throw in here is on third downs, who's in the game? It's JoJo Hayden, it's Daniel Brown, it's Kenenna Otaluga. Like those linebackers get really involved there. And that's what I like about what Aaron Henry and the defensive staff have done with some of those sub packages. But first and second down, if the team's throwing, I do need to see more. But I think that's why you brought a Leon Lowry in. And it's on the coaching staff to get more out of him than Wisconsin did.
Yeah, and that's fair. My number 2 is defensive line. I'm really high.
You and I.
I really like the West. I like James Thompson a lot. I think he is the guy who could step into that. Dennis Briggs was really productive. I think James Thompson has a lot left to unpack here, and he's an NFL guy. I'm extremely high on what he can be. I like the depth at nose tackle. You can, however it shakes out, right? Is it going to be Kurt Neal? Is it going to be Jeremiah Warren? Is it going to be Angelo McCollum? you've got three really good options there, and General Hunt is your turbo package, nose tackle. You go and you get, Tommy Wadirajai has got to kind of recognize or fulfill his talents. He's really, really talented. He's been to a few schools, right? This has got to be the one that he unlocks everything here. Carter Hewitt's the guy. I think he could be a rotational guy. If he's Alex Bray for you, who doesn't get pushed around as much, maybe he's not the most disruptive, but if he's good against the run, I'll take that with him. And then you still have Pat Farrell. I think Angelo McCollum is someone who's really, really fascinating. That's what I like about the group is you go from, especially nose tackle, you go from proven in the Big Ten with Kurt Neal. Jeremiah Warren got some experience. I think he's also got some versatility, Jeremy. And then you have someone who I think in McCollum is incredibly intriguing with the way that he's quick off the ball. Maybe I'm too high on the defensive line, but James Thompson carries a lot of weight for me because I think he's a really good player.
I could see this group because I do think defensive line on my list has the potential maybe to rise as much, but I kind of had them in a tier, and we'll get in the wide receiver conversation of the wide receivers, and that I like the depth. I like that they have a lot of options. I still got to see these guys prove it. James Thompson, I feel like he's going to be a good starter. Like, I think he can be better than what Dennis Briggs was. He's different than what they've had at that position. You kind of combine Dennis Briggs and Keith Randolph Jr., and I think you can kind of have that kind of player. I think he could be really good. He is coming off a pec injury, so I needed to see him healthy. But if he weren't healthy, how do I feel about the rest of the group? Like, Tommy Wad didn't play at Florida State, a bad team last year. Carter Hewitt's coming up from Northern Iowa, and I am high on what Angelo McCollum will be. I do think Pat Farrell is going to be better, and I do think Jeremiah Warren is going to be better, but those guys have to be better to be the number 2 group on my team. So this was an okay group last year, right? Like T. Raw Edwards and Dennis Briggs were pretty good. Outside of that, not great. And they got pushed around a little bit. So I feel like there's a lot of improvement this group has to make, and you lost your 2 best players. You filled in nicely, and you hope that the growth of the young guys helps, but I'm not as confident yet in that defensive line, though I do think it could take a step forward if James Thompson is as good as they thought. Maybe Kurt Neal can be like T. Raw Edwards. He's going to be better. I don't know. So I feel good about the depth. I just still have question marks about it.
That's fair. I also feel really good about the coach.
Sure. Yeah.
Like that maybe subconsciously that pushed them up a notch or 2 for me with Terrence Jamison coaching that position group. But here's the thing. Like, as I thought through this, I really believe in like production that we've seen. Yeah. And most of the rest of my rankings, I feel like reflect that. This one didn't as much, but I'm bought in on the depth that they have on the defensive line. And I think James Thompson is in for one.
This wouldn't be fun if we agreed on all of these. So who you got number 3, Joey? On your Illini position rankings, you have DBs and D-line 1 and 2.
Yeah, I don't like the depth here, but I love the number 1 guy, and it's quarterback. Like I knew I don't know what happens if Luke Altmaier gets hurt. Things aren't great, right? But man, if that guy's healthy, you have one of the top returning quarterbacks in the Big Ten, a guy in his 3rd year in the Illinois system. I'm all in on what he can be this season and what he's shown to this point. I think, look, when we say, like, what if your starter gets hurt at quarterback, every team in America is saying that because the quarterback carousel moves. And you don't have – like, Donovan Leary was an incredible luxury last season, a guy who had been in your system for so long. Ethan Hampton's a guy who's been around college football. I think he could go in there and not throw the ball into – like, I think he could hold his own for a little bit, for at least a game.
You know what I love about Ethan Hampton? He calls himself a game manager. Like, he knows what he is, and I like that because, listen, if I got to go a whole season with Ethan Hampton in the Big Ten, I'm not feeling like Illinois is going to go as far as you hope they do. But if you got to go a game, like, can he do the Art Sikowski thing where he battles, he finds a way to win a game and keep you in it and not make big mistakes? Yeah, I feel like he can do that.
Is your running game healthy? If so, then I think Ethan Hampton can go in and be just fine. Is your defense as good as we think the defense can be? If yes, and Ethan Hampton can go in for a game, maybe 2, and be just fine. But Illinois, like every team in America, is reliant on their starting quarterback staying healthy. Maybe there's there are programs who are going to have maybe more proven options as their second or maybe higher profile guys as their number 2. But by and large, no one can afford their quarterback going down, especially teams that are trying to make the college football playoff, like Illinois very much is trying to do.
Yeah, I feel better about the two positions I had in front: defensive backs, outside linebackers with depth, right? You have stars, but you also have depth. Quarterbacks, I feel like I got a game manager in my second guy, and that's not a hit on him. I just, he can add a lot, Ethan, to the run game himself. So that gives you another kind of dynamic when he comes into the game if he has to. I would feel a lot better if Carson Boyd were in his second year, right? Because that's a dynamic talent. You throw him in a game, you're going to make mistakes, but there's also the high upside of what his talent level can be. You just would like another year in the system and kind of having that experience. But Illinois is very high on what Carson Boyd could be. Trey Petty's obviously been here for now 2 years. But yeah, it's Luke Altmaier. If it were Luke Altmaier and Donovan Leary, this could be 1 or 2, right? Like that's how you feel about the position. Is it's a strength of your team to have Luke Altmaier. And for me, I don't know how many Big Ten teams feel better about their starting quarterback. Probably Penn State. Who else?
I mean, you guys look at the heavy hitters, right? Like, who's Oregon got going? Is that Dante Moore?
Unbelievably talented. Julian Sain at Ohio State's unbelievably talented. Bryce Underwood at Michigan, freshman.
I think Nebraska is probably pretty confident in its quarterback situation. Dylan Raiola is really, really talented. He's younger. It wasn't a burn the world down season a year ago, but I bet there's a lot of confidence in Raiola at Nebraska.
Yeah, I could see him. Like, he kind of had made the mistakes of what Luke Altmaier did as a first-time quarterback, right? So I can see him kind of having a Luke Altmaier type season. But yeah, there's just not many teams in the Big Ten that feel as good about their quarterback, what the floor is. The question is, for me, is, do his targets make as many plays for him? And we'll get into that conversation here in a little bit. So, I had quarterbacks number 3. If people didn't see me type that in on our YouTube channel, if you're listening on the podcast. So I had them number 3 as well. So you got number 4, Joey.
I'm going to just be in a full sense of transparency. You have convinced me unintentionally to move outside linebackers up 1, and you'll see why. I wasn't married to what was my number 4 spot there. But Leon Lowry is experienced. When I think of that position, I think of go get the quarterback. Who is your non-gay backers? Who is really the one who's going to take you there? I think JoJo Hayden has that potential, but we got to see that, right? And I think outside linebacker is the right position for JoJo Hayden in college, especially in some of these sub packages. I think you and I believe we'll see a lot of sub packages from Illinois this year. And it's one of really the more encouraging things to see down the stretch of last season was mixing and matching some of those guys. I have a Joe Barna sign, so I can't be that low on Joe Barna. I want to see can you get a consistent disruptor opposite Gabe Atkins? Because Seth Coleman, when he was really, really on, he was very disruptive. But then there were stretches where he'd have 2 pressures a game for 3 or 4 games, and you just wondered, like, where is that guy who's got this length, who's got this athleticism, this quickness to go get the quarterback? So initially I was probably a little low on outside linebacker. I felt that when I typed it. You made a compelling case, so I will move them up 1 slot.
And the other interesting thing about outside linebackers is the coaching setup, right? Like, it's a question mark going into this year, but Trent Harris and Alex Panos were part of the group when they went on their 4-game winning streak, including a really good performance against South Carolina. And then you had Joe Kim, the martial arts expert to this, a pass rush specialist in the NFL for 3 decades. It'll just be interesting how that setup kind of gets the most out of that group. Guys, summer's not that far away. So make this your best season yet with nutritious 2-minute meals from Factor. Eating well has never been this easy. All you have to do, just heat up and enjoy, giving you more time to do what you want. Get outside instead of prepping and cooking indoors. Use Factor meals because they arrive fresh and ready to eat, perfect for any active lifestyle. And with 45 weekly menu options, you can pick gourmet meals that fit your goals. Choose from Calorie Smart, Keto, or my favorite, Protein Plus, and many more options. Factor powers your day with satisfying breakfasts, on-the-go lunches, premium dinners, and guilt-free snacks and desserts. It's easy to savor more this spring. Factor meals pack in the flavor with none of the fuss. So get started today at factormeals.com/Illini50off and use code Illini50off. That's Illini50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code Illini50off at factormeals.com/Illini50off for 50% off plus free ship. Number 4, Joey. It ain't sexy, but it wins games. I'm going with the specialist. You got all Big Ten kicker, honorable mention last year, and David Alano. Pretty good first season for David Alano, right? You have an all Big Ten punter in Keelan Crimmins, who I think is going to be an upgrade. Illinois thinks is definitely going to be an upgrade. He obviously showed what he could do at Purdue. And then you had Lucas Osada from North Carolina, who can be the kickoff specialist, take over for Ethan Machowski, and by the stats was better than Ethan Machowski as a kickoff specialist. Plus, he can be a kicker and a punter backup for you. So I could probably have these guys higher because they're all Big Ten honorable mention guys. Plus, a long snapper, by the way, in Lane Hansen, who's been really, really good for Illinois. I probably could have gone a little bit higher, but quarterback, pass rushers, secondary obviously makes a bigger impact on a game. But I don't want to overlook. This is a really good specialist group.
Yeah, I had specialists lower because I just think of the consistent impact on a game. And to your point, though, yeah, those are all Big Ten type of guys. And you can throw Hank Beatty in that conversation, trying to make it like a special teams look, just given his ability as a punt returner. Yeah, I can't really argue with that. I had him lower just because I'm not as bold as you are, Jeremy. But I like what they have there, especially adding Osada in the spring. That, as we talked about a lot, really cleaned up a sneaky, significant need as backup punter, and then he can come in and be the specialist, kickoff specialist, rather.
All right, Illini position rankings. I could add like Hank Beatty as a punt returner just to trump the argument, but I won't. I'm just including the kickers, punters, and long snappers there. Joey's position rankings so far: defensive back, defensive line, quarterbacks, outside linebackers. Who you got number 5, Joe?
I went with offensive line. They returned 5 starters. We will see if all 5 starters start week 1, or if Brandon Hansen waltzes in there and steals a job, or if Tyler McMillan, who was announced today, Jeremy, the Southeast Missouri, is it state?
Yes,
SEMO. Yeah. We'll see if he can kind of be a Melvin Priestley-like, quietly steal the right tackle job, right, and kick Priestley into right guard. But you look at Kreutz and Geske; they're going into their 3rd years as starters. Josh Kreutz, I mean, they're going to follow that guy wherever he goes. J.C. Davis, getting him back, exceptional. I mean, it changed probably my outlook on the entire offensive line to have that guy back as left tackle. I think Melvin Priestley is still in for another jump, to be honest with you. He had his first year in the Big Ten. It wasn't always very clean. It wasn't perfect, but you saw his athleticism. You know he's incredibly powerful. You know he plays at about a 15 out of 10 on every play. Like, I do think there's another level for him to reach in his final season. A guy who's unquestionably a draftable prospect next season, just probably a guard in the NFL, as we've talked about a lot. My question is depth. I think Illinois has taken meaningful steps to address that this offseason with Aiden Knappich, is it Nathan Knappich, his little brother? Aiden Knappich, as we've talked about a ton on here, but just for anyone who maybe had forgotten, that is a break glass in case of emergency redshirt left tackle, right? I mean, I think they would very much prefer to not play him. Nathan Knappich still needs some development. Tyler McMillan, we talked about him.
Just to go with your plan, Joey, I think it's J.C. Davis this year, one of the best left tackles potentially in the country. Then you'd have Aiden Knappich in 2026, and then Nathan Knappich in 2027 and 2028 at left tackle.
Right. Then, as we talked about, we'll see what McMillan can do on the right side. Worst case, he's a backup right tackle. We'll see if Brandon Hansen can take the job from Brandon Henderson at right guard. So I think the spring made me feel better about the depth that they had. You'll get TJ McMillan back at backup center, but I really, really like that starting 5 and what they could be going into next season, especially with Melvin Priestley and a potential jump he could make.
Yep, I'm with you, Joe. This is where I had offensive line as well. JC Davis, I thought towards the end of the season was one of the best tackles in the Big Ten. He had some ups and downs early in the season as he's making that adjustment coming from New Mexico. But he was a consistently solid pass protector outside of playing Penn State, which was just a ridiculous defensive front. But he was really good the last 6 or 7 games. I don't think he gave up a sack during that stretch. And then you saw him take a big step forward as a run blocker, right? And Northwestern, some of the highlight reel blocks he made in that one certainly showed that. So Illinois thinks he's going to be drafted very high next year. His 5th year, or was it 6th year of college, 5th year of college? But another year at Illinois is certainly going to help him. And Melvin Priestley, I'd love to play him at guard because I think that's his position at the NFL, but I agree with you. I think he takes another step forward. Josh Krutz, really solid, good leader. Josh Geske, is a solid starter. The question mark is, who is the 5th guy? Does Brandon Henderson take a step forward, or does Tyler McMillan or Brandon Hansen have a chance to steal a job during training camp or during the middle of the season? I do have questions a little bit on the interior of the offensive line. Like, is Brandon Hansen ready to be that contributor? Is Brandon Henderson ready to be a consistent, starter at guard? And then Tyler McMillan obviously is making a big step up. Aiden Knappich, if he had to play, is he ready for the Big Ten? So there are some questions there about some depth, but I do feel better about them after what they've done this spring, adding a guy like McMillan. Is this going to be one of the best offensive lines in the Big Ten? Like, is it an elite offensive line? I don't know, but I think it should be a good one, right? I think it should be a good one. I just need a better start from the offensive line. I need a better start to the season from the offensive line. And that's why I think it's really important if you can have some of that continuity, having 4 or 5 starters returning or 5 of 5 starters all returning, that could be really impactful for this group, because it just feels like the last couple of seasons, 2023 especially, it didn't start well, and that was probably staff inflicted. But 2024, it wasn't a consistent start. You'd like this group to hit the ground running.
Yeah, I think I want to ask you how you would compare it to 2022, which wasn't a perfect offensive line. Chase Brown had incredible numbers, but Chase Brown is starting for the Bengals.
Chase Brown,
now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think if I look at like points of comparison, that is a group that I would look at. Now, you just don't have a Chase Brown like that. That's the hard part, to clean up some of those mistakes. But I think this group could be on par with that. I mean, yeah, Julian Pearl, I would take JC Davis over Julian Pearl. At this point, I would take Alex Palczewski at right tackle over Melvin Priestley. But otherwise, I mean, Krutz is older. That was Pilstrom that year, wasn't it?
I would have gone with it was Pilstrom. 2022 had 3 NFL draft picks on it, right? Doug Kramer, Vidarian Lowe, or was that 21? They were on 21.
That was 21.
Okay, so Isaiah
22 was Isaiah Adams at left guard, Pearl at left tackle,
Palczewski
at right tackle, and right guard was, am I drawing a blank here?
I am too.
This is not good.
This is why we don't do podcasts early in the morning.
Yeah. It's going to be very obvious to me when you figure out who it was. That's driving me insane.
Hold on. I got the depth chart. Jordan Slaughter and Zy Chrysler. It was Zy Chrysler.
Duh. I mean, I think that's a pretty fair reference point. And Chase Brown just made some of those growing pains from Zy Chrysler, Alex Pilstrom at center, made those from Isaiah Adams, just stepping up into the Big Ten. Chase Brown cleaned up a lot of stuff, right? But I think that's a good point to look at. Yeah.
I think it's a similar offensive line, which that one was Joe Moore Award. I thought that was a little inflated because of Chase Brown, Joe Moore Award semifinalist that year. But I do think JC Davis, like Isaiah Adams, has a chance to be a top 100 draft pick. I think Melvin Priestley has a chance to be a draft pick, and I feel like the other guys are solid starters. So I think it's going to be a good group. I don't know if it's going to be an elite group, but I think it's going to be a good group. All right, who do you have number 6 on your position rankings?
I have running back with the huge caveat of, are they healthy? Mm-hmm. Caden Fagan, when he's been healthy, he's kind of gotten hurt at unfortunate times in his own season progression. He gets hurt. I think that was the Indiana game back in 2023.
Minnesota.
Was definitely
after the Minnesota.
After the Minnesota, it was Indiana. He gets hurt in that one. It's like he has started to really go, right? He had started to get the opportunity.
He had the chance
going.
He had the chance to be the freshman of the year. Like, we were starting to, does he have a chance or a case? Because Darius Taylor was hurt, and I think it was
Dylan Thieneman.
No, Dylan Thieneman. Yeah, probably wouldn't have won it, but he was starting to make a case.
And the way we thought, especially with Luke Altmaier out for that Indiana game, it's like, oh, they might just give the ball to Caden Fagan forever here and let him run. And then I thought last year was a slower start, but about the time he started to get those wheels going, he gets hurt. I want to see him in a season where the wheels are going and Caden Fagan can put that speed, put that power all together. So the health is the biggest question mark for me. I like him as a pass catcher too. I think that's kind of an underrated part of his game. Josh McCray was so good at it, who has obviously since transferred to Georgia. And Aiden Lawfrey, the close of last season was really, really impressive for him. He, like Fagan, has some injuries in the past. He's got to stay healthy. And then it's Khalil Valentine time. It is his big moment here with Josh McCray gone to be that number 3 running back. He and Lawfrey are similar. He's probably a little quicker. Lawfrey's probably got more power than Valentine in his game, but it's a big opportunity for him. So I would have this is a position group I think that over the season could rise if they're healthy. Yeah. But right now, that's a big, big caveat to me. And then, Jeremy, I know you're probably you might have him here or very close after, but can a freshman, can John Forster, who's a guy who looks like he is physically ready, can he come in and steal some Valentine-like snaps throughout the course of the season?
Yeah, I mean, you hit all the great points. I do have running backs here as well at number 6 for me, following DBs, outside linebackers, quarterback specialists, offensive line. Yeah, if this group is healthy, if Lawfrey and Fagan are healthy for an entire season or at least 10, 11 games, I feel like they can combine for 1,700 yards, right? And 12 to 15 touchdowns. I do feel like that is a very good duo, but it's a duo that has a lot of injuries in their history, but there's also some flashes of what they could be. And you talked about a Fagan just as he was getting going that Minnesota game. He was a star. We think about John Paddock and Isaiah Williams hooking up on that last play, but Caden Fagan really got him back in that game, that screen pass he took for a touchdown. And then Lawfrey at the end of the year, man, looked fantastic. It's what we've thought he could be when he picked Illinois over Iowa and finally had a mostly healthy season. Just got to keep those hamstrings healthy. It seems like the main thing for him, but I think he could be dynamic given the confidence that he gained. And I thought Fagan, his vision was really starting to get a lot better, but losing Josh McCray kept this group from probably dropped this group from like 4 to 6 for me, because, you know, I wasn't high on Josh McCray going into last year. And even the first 3 or 4 games, like I just didn't see it with him. But
the first 3 or 4 games, I'm sitting there like, give the ball to Fagan. I mean, it was a slow. I don't know that we were alone in that line of thinking either, Jeremy.
No, but like then you just saw everything he did well. And obviously the lasting memory we now have is the bowl game, but it was just, he had the best vision of that group. He had the best blocking of that group. And those are 2 things that shouldn't go overlooked. And obviously when he gets at the goal line, he has a great chance of scoring. So they got to overcome that. I think Khalil Valentine and Aiden Lawfrey, I think Khalil Valentine behind Aiden Lawfrey is a good group. The question is, if Fagan goes down, is Lawfrey capable of taking 20 touches a game? Or is John Forster ready? Because if we would have heard a little bit more about him, like if he would have enrolled early, Joey, and we started to hear some buzz, I'd feel better about this group. I do think he's capable of playing early there, but yeah, the depth is a little bit more question mark because you have a couple guys at the top of that depth chart who have had so many injuries.
Yeah, there's 2 things I want to hit on there. You talked about how good Josh McCray was at the goal line. He converted a lot of touchdowns that way. And I know there's been some consternation like on our message boards about, well, who's going to be the goal line back? Caden Fagan is still a really big guy. Like I get that Josh McCray runs with a significant amount of power. I think at his size, Caden Fagan is just fine on some of those short yardage runs, but I also think Luke Altmaier looked a little bit bigger this spring. It's my understanding he's put on more than 10 pounds. I think another year of Josh Kreutz at center. Could you get back to that DeVito sneak that you saw in that 2022 season without someone just to turn around and give it to Josh McCray. I'm curious about that.
That'd be a lot of growth. Remember 2 years ago, they wouldn't even do it.
They wouldn't, no interest in it.
There's no interest. Handle a snap under center. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if that's something they could do just without the give it to McCray option there. And then we have to talk about Jordan Anderson, because I do think if an injury happened, it's move him back to the running back room and see what he can do back there. I still think even in a short yardage situation, the guy's taken thousands of handoffs over the course of his football life. Like, I still think he knows how to turn.
Clutch right here. He had ones last year that he converted. So I do think, like, we classify him now as a tight end. I kind of classify him as an H-back, and that could include, short yardage situations. You see maybe Caden Fagan and Jordan Anderson in the backfield would be a little fun. I think we saw one of those at one time, because that was like 500 pounds of running back in the back.
And I remember thinking, like, are they just going to give it to, like, who's in this fullback spot and let the other one just hit them into the end zone? He's a guy, Jordan Anderson, we do have him at tight end, so we're probably talking about him a little early here. But I'm really interested to see what his offensive role looks like. I don't expect it to be big, but I expect it to be versatile. Yeah. Like, I think of someone like his high school teammate, Malachi Hood, who could be in line for a bigger role, or like a JoJo Hayden on the other side of the ball last year, just very situationally used, but effectively used in those situations.
Kind of the Illini's Taysom Hill kind of player.
Could be.
You know what I mean?
It'd be sweet if he threw a pass. That'd be cool.
I mean, he can catch passes. I know that, but I'm just saying, like, a versatile guy.
Yeah.
Maybe only plays like 5 snaps on offense a game, but can be very versatile in those snaps. I think a lot of it, as you said, short yardage, goal line, red zone makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm really interested in how that looks for him. Are we on number 7?
Number 7, Joey, who you got?
I moved them up in the 23rd hour this morning. I have wide receiver. I did have them lower because I think Hudson Clement's going to lead the team in receiving yards this season. He's done it at the Power 4 level. He was the leading receiver for West Virginia. He got here in the spring, which is that's a really, really big deal for me, and someone who could be a number 1 or number 2 wide receiver to build that rapport with Luke Altmaier. I feel comfortable with what they have in the slot. I like what they have in the slot. I think Colin Dixon is a breakout candidate this season. I know he played a lot of snaps last season, but I think he could take it up a notch in terms of production this year. Then Hank Beatty, that's the Mr. Reliable that they've talked about since he enrolled at Illinois in terms of his production on the offensive side of the ball, which we hadn't really seen a great deal up to this point. He's talked about how special teams has helped him take that step as a wide receiver. But then who is the no doubt number 2 outside wide receiver? Justin Bowick. He looks the part, man. He is a big guy. He's got a big catch radius. He's just not very experienced, like, period. He didn't play a ton after with at Ball State last season. He was at Eastern Illinois before that. Like, there's a lot. I still want to see that on the field out of him. Alexander Kapka-Jones, he's got Luke Altmaier's trust. We haven't seen it during a game at this level. I think those guys are capable, but I want to see it from them. And then maybe the most obvious one that we need to talk about is Malik Elzy. We've been on this podcast for 3 years. Hey, this is the moment. This is the moment. It's just, he's been blocked, right? It's been Casey Washington. It's been Pat Bryan. It's been Zachary Franklin. Well, now those guys are gone. And now it's Malik Elzy's time. Illinois, I know they believe in Malik Elzy. I know you probably have a little bit more on that than I do, but it's really time for him to take that step and be that starting outside wide receiver and put it all together. And to be fair, this will be the biggest opportunity we think that he's had during his time here.
All right. So I have these groups in the same tier. So you had defensive line 2. I have it 7. Okay. I think James Thompson, as long as he's healthy, and he has been, is going to be very good. I think outside of Johnny Newton, he could be as good of a defensive lineman as Illinois has had during Brett Bielema's tenure. But he's coming off that injury, but he's shown that he can be a very good Big Ten starter. I think Kurt Neal, at the worst, is going to be a solid Big Ten starter at nose tackle, as long as Jeremiah Warren or Angel McComb don't beat him out. But I do think Kurt Neal will be that guy and at least play like 300, 400 snaps at that nose tackle position. And then, we got to see Tomiwa Durajaye, Carter Hewitt, some experience you're adding to that group. Alex Bray leaves, so you fill it in with Hewitt, and Tommy Watt's probably a little bit more talented, bigger than what Alex Bray was. And I do feel like your second string is going to be better. Like Jeremiah Warren, Angelo McCollum, Pat Farrell, those guys just really weren't ready last year and I throw Alex Bray in there to be counted on for 300, 400 snaps but now that they are third year players, Angelo McCollum's a second year player, but now that most of those guys are second, third year players, I think they should be solid rotation players and that you can keep your guys maybe a little bit more fresh to where it's 300, 400 snaps for most of these guys outside of James Thompson than 600, 700 4-year starters. So I do feel like the floor is decently high. The ceiling, I think, is solid, is good. I think Thompson could be very good, potentially an NFL draft pick. I do think this group has some potential to rise up. But I just think, Joey, this group isn't going from, a bad group last year, but it wasn't a great defensive line last year, right? Like Illinois got pushed around a little bit. So as long as that improves, because I think that's where the defense has the most to gain is first and second down. Can they stop the run and can be more competitive stopping the run?
Yeah, I feel comfortable given the age that they brought in with the portal that they'll be able to hold up in that. Alex Bray, I think he could have used another year. He went to a more four-man front system, so obviously there was the thought of putting on the amount of weight necessary to play in that position. So you just get older guys who have been in that weight program. I feel comfortable about their ability to stop the run. Can they get after the quarterback as a supplementary pass rusher to your edge rushers? And that's the question mark that I have. But I don't know. That I reserve the right to say that I didn't actually have them at number 2 come later on in the year. But I think I'm really big on James Thompson. I think he's a guy who could lift that in a pretty real way.
Let me go to my number 8 because my number 8 is wide receiver. Like I could have had wide receiver at 7. I kind of feel the same about these groups because you are replacing a lot, but I like what you've added to fill in. Hudson Clement, as you said, a number 1 proven receiver. Whether he's number 1 or number 2 at Illinois, like he's going to be one of the top targets, I think, for Luke Altmaier, especially as they gain more rapport going through the summer, going through training camp, and going through the games. Like there are parts of him that go, oh, that's a little similar to Pat Bryant. And there's parts of him that go, oh, that's a little similar to Zachary Franklin. So I like his versatility. I feel like Colin Dixon can take a major step forward just because he's going to have more targets. This guy that mostly was a blocker last year, but we saw flashes of what he could do down the field and what he can do after the catch. And I think the slot position is going to be one of the most improved on the team because they're just going to get targeted more, right? Like Isaiah Williams in this offense put up monster numbers, but last year your guys were best on the outside. It was Pat Bryant, Zachary Franklin. They were able to get separation, win those one-on-one battles, whether it was just with your route running with Franklin or down the field, 50-50 balls with Pat Bryant. So I don't feel like you have a Pat Bryant on this team. Those are hard to find. He's a 3rd-round draft pick for a reason. But I do feel like you have multiple options. Colin after the catch, physical, what he can do. He's got some speed. Hank Beatty, just the separation ability, the hands. So I do think the slot receivers can combine to have a very, very good year. The question is in that X spot, man. It is Malik Elzy. It is your time. He does not need to be Pat Bryant. Can he be Pat Bryant's sophomore year, where it's 35 catches for 500 yards and a couple touchdowns? I don't know if he's going to be Pat Bryant Jr. year where he had 7 touchdowns, right? Because that was Pat's basically 3rd year as a starter. But Illinois is really trying to infuse him with confidence because they feel he can be the guy. It's just got to believe you can be the guy and kind of focus on what you got to do day in and day out. But they had a competition around him for a reason, to force him to step up. And Justin Bullock, I think at worst, Joey, can be throw him in there, throw the ball up for him, see if he can win the 50-50 battle. And Alex Kapka-Jones is going to play. There's no doubt about that. But this is the deepest group Illinois has had wide receiver, but it's got questions at the top of it. It's something they haven't had the last couple of years with Pat Bryant, Casey Washington, Isaiah Williams, and Zachary Franklin. Yeah,
it's been interesting to watch the kind of the off-season dialogue around this particular position group change over the last couple of years. Because 2022 was, okay, who replaces the slot? We know who's on the outside. What's the slot look like going into – no, I Isaiah was around in 2023.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So after 2023, it's who replaces the slot. And that ends up being Colin Dixon, Hank Beatty. Now you feel really good about that. And you've got to go back to replacing your two outside guys with Zachary Franklin and Pat Bryant. So, yeah, it's just every offseason's kind of shifted a little bit, less experience or less Big Ten experience in this group. We almost made it through until me to talking about this group without mentioning Braden Trimble. I don't know really where to gauge expectations for him. I think he's going to play because I think you don't.
Yeah.
No, he's not going to redshirt. And a lot of that, Jeremy, is you don't have Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin absorbing so many snaps outside. So Trimble's the guy who got a lot of buzz. We have to bring him up because I do think he's going to play. He might be a guy on special teams too as a returner, especially kick returner, obviously with Hank Beatty.
And if you have an injury or somebody doesn't step up, Braden Trimble could get opportunities, right? And then maybe we're talking about him later on in the season as somebody who could play. I certainly can see him playing in the third and fourth quarter of some of these early bye games and showing people something, right? And maybe getting some more reps because of that, because they are very high on what he will be.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know where to gauge it. I don't want to get too bold on May 19th about Braden Trimble, but they talk very highly of him for a reason, and it's something that we got to mention when we're talking about this position room.
All right, Joey, who do you got number 8?
Yeah, we don't need to spend a ton of time on specialists. I have it lower than you, not for any different beliefs in what they are from a talent standpoint. I just, in terms of your down-to-down impact on the game, I just think those other position groups obviously have a bigger impact. But, yeah, I thought David Alano was really good last season, his first season as a starter. We know Keelan Crimmins. I think going to get Osato is a perfect fix to what the Brett Bielema basically shouted from the rooftops that his team needed in spring. So it's a talented group of specialists, and as you mentioned, Lane Hansen, long snapper. That's probably some more all Big Ten. We'll see, right? Honorable mention feels right, but we'll see if it goes any further than that.
Number 9, who you got?
I've got linebacker at number 9, so we're down to the last two, obviously, here. I thought this was kind of a tough one for me to place, to be honest with you, because Dylan Rosiak is a proven Big Ten starter. I thought he had a really nice year before his injury last season. You think back, obviously, to the walk-off sack against Nebraska. I just thought he's a guy they really believed in defensively. Maybe not the fastest guy, but he can hold his own on all 3 downs. That was really valuable for Illinois. And we had a ton of questions, after he got hurt, and just the way that they mixed and matched James Kreutz and Malachi Hood. Malachi Hood is very much a breakout candidate for me. Someone's got to replace Ryan Mead as that weak side linebacker. I think he could be a guy who steps in.
Kudos to Ryan
Mead
for making that conversation. Like, hey, you got to fill that, because the last 3 or 4 games, Ryan Mead played great ball.
He did. He answered a lot of questions that we had about Ryan Mead very much early in the season, and he played well at the end of the year. But if you're going to step into that role, there's more snaps coming your way. And I think Malachi Hood has the speed. He's got the strength to fill in and do a good job there. We just got to see more as those snaps increase from him. And I don't know what to expect out of Ish Kante. He's number 1 JUCO linebacker, a guy who I thought he was physically impressive looking when we saw him in spring ball. We know he's got some speed. How all of that comes together, I'm really, really curious about. I might have this group low at the end of the day in terms of what I think they could do. This is a group that could rise, especially with Archie McDaniel as their position coach. But then, you move them up, someone's got to move down. I just didn't know who to move down in that order.
No, this is a great example of like, hey, somebody's got to be last on this list, because I feel really good about this group. I did not entering November last year. Right? I thought this was the worst group and a below average Big Ten group. And then all of a sudden, Dylan Rosiak goes down, and it's like, how are they going to get through the end of this season? Like, this position could really, really struggle. I have them number 9 like you, but like, I think there's a solid group, and that's way better than I would have thought. Halfway through last year, one guy you didn't even mention is Kaneno Deluga. They loved what they saw from him in the spring. He was great late in the season where he finally got in that like rotational role, that dime package. He's a phenomenal pass rusher when he's kind of in that A gap, that B gap, rushing people. He's just got a knack for it. But he was playing more weak side linebacker, and they feel like his athleticism is completely back after that leg fracture late in the 2023 season. You mentioned Hood. Huge ceiling. Like they're really excited about what he can be. James Cruz, a solid backup Mike linebacker. Ish Conte's a talent upgrade. Long-term Grant Bierman. They needed a guy like that, 6'4". I think he's like 225 right now. He'll probably get up to 240 in a year or two. So I think he's probably a year away from making a huge impact. But Archie McDaniel has done a great job. Like the talent he has added in this group and what he and Aaron Henry got out of this group late in the season was really impressive. And part of it was putting guys in positions to succeed, of mixing and matching them based on down distance. I thought that was fantastic. So, yeah, it's a group I feel like is really solid. It's got some depth. It's got a lot of different chess pieces, right, that they can kind of mix and match with. And I kind of want to put JoJo Hayden in here a little bit because he can kind of play off the ball at times. Daniel Brown can play off the ball at times. But it's just kind of a fun group in that I don't know, like Malachi Hood maybe eventually has NFL potential, but there's some good, impactful college players potentially in this group.
Is he your weak side linebacker going into week one?
Who's that, Odeluga?
I guess you got Odeluga over Hood?
I don't know. I
don't know. James Cruz is more of a true Mike. So, yeah, I mean, that's why he's not in that conversation.
Dylan Rosiak will play 600 plus snaps, 700
yes.
snaps, right? Like he's your Mike linebacker. If he gets hurt, Cruz goes in. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a lot of 100 to 300 snaps between all those other guys, right? Like it's kind of mix and match with them.
Yeah, and I'm also curious what Dylan Rosiak's workload looks like in the month of September. He is coming off of an ankle injury. We did see him at times in spring practices, but look, Kenen Odeluga took a little bit of time. I don't know that it was an apples to apples same injury, but maybe it's you try to limit his workload early in terms of Dylan Rosiak because James Cruz showed you what he could do and just kind of let Rosiak get back into game speed, I guess, for lack of better terms. He's so experienced and he's done so much. I don't know that you have to go that route, but I am curious if it's kind of more of a slower process early on, or he's a guy against like a Western Illinois, you get out of there pretty early and get on to Duke the next week.
All right, let's wrap this up. Somebody had to be last. We both have tight ends last, and I like Tanner Arkin a lot. I think he's very valuable to what they do. He had an argument as one of the top 2 or 3 blockers on this team last year. He's so impactful there. He's a solid pass catcher, especially in the underneath routes. I'm interested to see if he can take another step down the field, but they just need a more dynamic pass catcher. And that's where you hope Cole Russ can do it. But he's coming off a serious knee injury. We didn't get to see him a lot in the spring. He did practice a little bit in limited capacity during the spring. But there's a lot on his plate. They've also added some depth in Davin Stoffel and Christian Abney. Stoffel from South Dakota State started last year. I do like, he looks like a Big Ten tight end size-wise. He moves, he's fluid. So I do like his addition. Obviously making a big leap up to the Big Ten. Christian Abney out of Ball State. Mike New connection there. Mike New, the former Ball State coach, is an analyst for Illinois. So I like that they've addressed the depth because you do want 4 playable guys. And then you add Jordan Anderson in the mix. Like, this is an interesting group to me, Joey. I think it can be a solid, serviceable group. There's a lot riding on Cole Rusk. Like, can this be a dynamic group? It feels like that's a lot on Cole Rusk.
Yeah, this group can move up a peg or two with Cole Rusk because he is that downfield guy that Illinois hasn't really had. Tip Ryman was a 3rd-round pick. He wasn't really a downfield guy. Tanner Arkin is really wonderful at the line of scrimmage. He's fantastic as a blocker, but he's not really been that downfield guy. And I think there's a window there for Cole Rusk to come in here if he's healthy or completely back. I assume Brett Bielema said everybody going into winter or summer workouts will be healthy, but being able to go through things and playing at a high level in a game is something we still got to see from him. He's obviously still taking a jump into the Big Ten, but he's a guy who could stretch them downfield in ways that we haven't really seen since Daniel Barker at Illinois. So there is a lot riding on him, but he can also elevate this position room in in a way, I do know that going into last year, he was a focal point of the offense. He was a guy that they thought could be that downfield guy. Obviously, you have to see how that plays out with the way Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin ultimately played and the requirement to target them a lot because they were as good as what they were. But I know they had high plans for Cole Russ before that knee injury last season, but you got to see it on the field, Jeremy. And I think that's what's most missing with him.
Yeah, and the reason I might sound like I have tempered expectations is because I usually, with the history of knee injuries, right? Like, it's not just physically, it's the mental part of coming back from an injury like this, of trusting yourself. And he hasn't done it at this level too. So I think he is one of the biggest X factors on this team because of the position he plays, because of what he could be at that position. It's just, there's a lot of unknown with him, both physically, stepping up a level. We do know Luke Altmaier really likes him. We know the staff really, really likes him. We know the staff would have liked Cole Rusk on the team last year to help make the pitch to J.C. Anderson, Max Suter, all of that. But yeah, it's just he's one of the biggest X factors, but also one of the bigger question marks.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see what he looks like that we see in training camp. And then, can a Western Illinois game be a game where you're able to force feed him some targets to get him, as you mentioned, from the mental side, feeling like, okay, yeah, I've caught a football before, I've run a football before, I know what I'm doing here. But I wonder if he's a guy that, whether it be early or late in that game, they throw it a lot to.
Yeah. All right, so let's review Joey's position rankings. Defensive backs 1, defensive line 2, quarterbacks 3, outside linebackers 4, followed by offensive line running backs at 5 and 6, wide receivers and specialists at 7 and 8, linebackers at 9 and 10. I had 1 defensive backs, 2 outside linebackers, 3 quarterbacks, 4 specialists, followed by offensive line and running backs, defensive line and wide receiver at 7 and 8, and linebackers and tight ends at 9 and 10. We had a lot of similarities, but a few differences. I was higher on the outside linebackers, Joey much higher on the defensive line than me, and I'm a little higher on the specialists. But it was a fun exercise, Joey. It's a good team. It's a deep team.
Yeah, it was fun. It was challenging to put it together in a way that to actually prepare for something and make sure you're doing it right. But as we open with, just because tight ends and linebackers are last, there's still a ton to be optimistic about with those position groups. They just have some more questions than others, right? And I think the big takeaway, this team is as deep of a Brett Bielema team as we have seen since he's been in Champaign, and it's as talented as any Brett Bielema team that we've seen come through Champaign. I don't want to say the most talented because 2022 had some NFL players on that team, but they've got a lot of talent spread out.
One of my favorite things of opening up the Phil Steele yearbook, and Brett Bielema just talked with him last week, is you kind of see where Illinois' positions rank in the Big Ten. Like, he does those position rankings. I think defensive backs for Illinois would be top 5, right, in the Big Ten. Outside linebackers, I would put maybe in that kind of group, top 6 or something like that. Quarterbacks, probably top 5, I would imagine. Offensive line, top half, maybe even higher, might get in the top 5. Running backs losing McCray, it'll be interesting. Probably middle of the pack. Defensive line, is it like the 3rd or 4th tier in the Big Ten? Linebackers similarly. Tight ends, I would imagine, more towards the bottom. Like, that's kind of how I think of this exercise too. Is like, which are some of the best groups in the Big Ten? I think defensive backs, outside linebackers, quarterbacks, maybe offensive line would be in that mix. I think running backs, defensive line, receiver would kind of be in those middle tiers. Then tight ends would probably be more of the bottom tier just because of the question marks we talked about.
Yeah, and again, there were a lot of position groups that I had kind of paired in the same 2 or 3 ranking window that could really be interchanged. I didn't know that we would be as different on defensive line in particular, but I think your points are fair, and I'm ultimately going to end up being too high on them. I just thought the way they reloaded in the portal was really impressive, and the guy that got the front of the room coaching them gets a ranking nod to move up a little bit.
All right, it was a fun exercise. We'll continue to do things like that throughout the offseason. Hope you enjoyed it. Give us a follow wherever you get your podcasts. Rate us, review us. We appreciate when you do that. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to us, hit the notifications bell as well. But for Joey Wagner, I'm Jeremy Werner. Everybody have a great day. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer Podcast.